the Sacramento Kings traded for DeMar DeRozan. They signed him to a 3-year, $74 million contract, and this is basically the big time news from the trade. The Kings get DeMar DeRozan. The Spurs get Harrison Barnes, an unprotected 2031 pick swap to the Spurs and Chris Duarte, and the Bulls get 2 second-round picks. So sign and trade DeMar DeRozan lands with the Kings. What is your takeaway from this deal, from this trade? Riv, Bulls, DeMar DeRozan, you've seen him for the last 3 years. What do you think this does for the Kings?
Well, first of all, shout out to DeMar. I felt like he was amazing for what Chicago needed him to be. Made an All-NBA team, couple All-Star games. Did everything he could for this team to try to, make them relevant, get them into the playoffs. I think one year he averaged like 28 points a game or something like that. He was a dog, broke a couple records here, so shout out to DeMar. He's always been consistent on just wanted to, play in Chicago, wanted to be for Chicago. He found a home there. Very good at mentoring the young guys in I.O., Kobe White, Patrick Williams. I think he drove all the way to I.O.'s high school to watch them retire his jersey, and I heard it's a really, really tough drive. I think it's Champaign or something like that. Something called like that. But DeMar was a big mentor for the younger guys, and it's tough to see him go because I thought he was one of the few guys in which Chicago fans liked and respected and understood and wanted to keep him if they could. But times are changing in Chicago. Times are definitely changing. Times needed to be changed, and it's happy that's happened now. As far as Sacramento getting DeMar, I know people are gonna, and even myself, I'm not as big on, making it a big deal about fit. I know a lot of people on Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is, are making this big idea about, the fit is nasty, the fit is trash. I'll be honest, bro, like, they got nothing for something. So, like, they made an upgrade, whether it's going to fit wrong or whether it's going to, not mesh together is something to see. But just looking at it, face value, DeMar DeRozan is an insane upgrade from Harrison Barnes, like by a wide margin. He's just so much of a better player than he is. And this is a guy who's still a 20-point-per-game scorer, still pretty efficient in what he does as a mid-range scorer, as a finisher, as a playmaker, as a good connector, a guy who can go get a bucket. He works really well in the pick and roll. ISO scoring is one of his things. Post-up game is there. Like, he has a lot of good things to his game. And what Mike Brown and the Sacramento Kings have done over the past 2 years is reinvent this offense, kind of make it more exciting. You see Fox working the mid-range really well, so I don't think DeMar is going to have a big issue with that. Sabonis has been really huge for them, run a lot of DHOs and stuff like that. Keep the ball moving. And I think Sacramento, all in all, they're a franchise that's not really going to get the big name type players. They're a franchise that is kind of like, in our era, has kind of been a failure. They've kind of been the laughing stock of the league. So for them, it's just about upgrading at talent no matter what. And DeMar DeRozan is an insane upgrade, like I mentioned, from Harrison Barnes. Now, how is it going to fit with Fox, whoever they started, the two, DeMar, Keegan, Sabonis? Only one way to figure out. But if anybody's going to do it, I think Mike Brown could be the guy to do it. And I think Fox being in the conversations to get DeMar to Sacramento seems like he's open and he's excited to play with DeMar and excited to figure it out. And in a West where everybody's so talented and everybody is upgrading, you got to find something. The Kings may not be these world beaters. They may not be championship level teams, but I don't like that everybody looks at a team and is, if they can't win the championship, we can't talk about it. If they can't win the championship, then there's no need for them to go get this guy. No, sometimes you have a period in your franchise where you just want to stay competitive. And I think the Kings going from pretty much the Chris Webber, Mike Bibby ages to being shit and worst in the league to now just being competitive. I think they're fine with just being that competitive window for right now. So for me, getting DeMar is dope. I do think the Bulls kind of whiffed on all of this, trading these guys last minute. You could have walked away with 8 or 9 picks last year by trading these players, even at the deadline. But, it's about time you finally made a trigger. You finally made a move. You pulled the trigger. You're now in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. Mm-hmm. So shout out to you for finally doing it. A little too late, but glad you did it. As for Sacramento, big upgrade from Harrison Barnes.
Absolutely. For Sacramento last year, when Malik Monk went down those final 10 games, they did not have another point guard or a ball handler to run their offense. And this move, to me, does it raise the Kings' floor? A little bit, but not a whole lot. What it really does is reinforce it, or I think I said their floor. Does it raise their ceiling? Not a whole lot. but it reinforces one of the higher floors in the Western Conference because naturally DeMar's a third All-Star. And those lineups where De'Aaron Fox is off the floor in the regular season, you don't have to play him as much. He's not going to have the same responsibility. And DeRozan, how well does he fit with Domas and De'Aaron? It's an imperfect fit. We're going to have to see how Mike Brown's able to utilize them, especially coming off the wings, getting DeMar in that soft in-between space where he is one of the premier mid-range scorers in the game. I think the biggest question here is how you're able to really amplify Domantas Sabonis' value if you're adding a new valve to this offense, which is DeMar ISOs. The big question to me, of course, is also going to be the shooting guard spot. You just traded one of your starters in Harrison Barnes. Do they go with a defensive player to pair alongside DeMar and De'Aaron like Keon Ellis, or do they go with a shot creator and or a shot maker like Kevin Huerter or Malik Monk? I think in this starting lineup, if you play Keon Ellis, I love what he brings defensively, and he's really developing on the offensive side, but it's a little bit too early for that. And they really need to get as much shooting in those fourth and fifth starter spots in order to make that trio work. Otherwise, I think they're going to have a lack of space, which is going to hold back DeMar in the second half of his 30s.
What do you think, JC?
I'm going to kind of ruin everybody's parade here. I kind of really don't like the trade. I don't like the idea of pairing DeMar DeRozan with this team. I was looking at a couple of statistics earlier today. DeMar DeRozan and De'Aaron Fox hold the ball in the NBA for 5 seconds, which is amongst one of the most in the NBA. So to get there, they're really ball dominant players. DeMar doesn't shoot the three really well. Mm-hmm. I know he shot at 37%. I don't know how many attempts, maybe 1-2 attempts per game career, but it's still average. Doesn't help them defensively. I do think that this will definitely be a fun team to watch. I will definitely probably tune into the Kings games this year, 100%. I like the pairing offensively. I think you have 3 great offensive players, but as far as doing anything, if that's what their intentions are to do, I still think that this team's at best maybe a second round exit if they get matched up with a good team against a team that's like iffy or whatever. But I still think that this team's a first round exit. One thing that's really underrated with DeMar DeRozan that I didn't know, he's actually relatively available. Since 2012, I was looking at the numbers. He hasn't missed more than 10 games since 2012 season. Malik Monk got hurt last year. In the case that Fox or Monk get hurt, you have another guy that can handle the scoring load. Like Riv say, he's a solid playmaker. But as far as the fit, I don't know. I have to see how he's going to play off Fox and Domantas Sabonis or whatever the case may be. But just looking at it from a long-term perspective, I don't think this is a good move if they're trying to contend or trying to build a contending roster. But I definitely do think that this team will be really fun to watch offensively, and definitely a team that that's good to sell for the fans right now. So
let me ask you a question. Yeah. I kind of agree their ceiling is around a second round exit.
At best.
The Kings never acquired DeMar DeRozan. What's the likelihood they win a first round series? Because they were just the 9th seed, won 46 games in that West.
I don't think that there's a high possibility that they do. I know the year that they were the 3rd or 2nd seed. They lost to Golden State in 7 games. Last year, obviously, they weren't that good. Definitely, DeMar DeRozan definitely does help, but the West is so loaded. We would pencil them in around playing to 6th seed, right? You're going to be playing a top 3 seed in the West in the first round. I don't like their chances against a top 3 seed in the West. That's just me, though. But it'll be fun basketball.
I think that's understandable. When we're talking about a long-term outlook, in this 3-team deal, the Bulls lost. The Spurs won. Harrison Barnes is a 38.7% three-point shooter. You now add that to a team that wants to take more threes and space the floor around Wemby, and he's an all-right defender. But they get an unprotected 2031 pick swap. They, in this draft, traded the 9th overall pick to the Wolves for 2 picks in the 2030s, 2030 and 2031. One is an unprotected first-round pick. Another one is a pick swap. We're talking about a team in the Spurs right now that they are loading up on these draft picks 6 to 7 years from now, which is going to be when Wemby is entering his prime. Yeah. The potential for the Kings to be bad or the Wolves to be bad 6 to 7 years from now, we have no idea what can happen. A down year can happen. And if that does happen, the Spurs capitalize on those picks, and they could pair a top-end talent with Victor Wembanyama in his prime, while also having talent around him from these years that they're going to be building up the roster around him. For the Sacramento Kings, I think this makes them a 50-win team. 2 years ago when they won 48 games, they were first in offensive rating. They dropped down to 13th this past season. But to me, I feel like the Kings, you guys know, the year they made the playoffs, I was high on them. I picked them to be a team to make the playoffs because I believed in the offseason moves that they made. And all year long, they had a spark to them. The light the beam stuff. That was a special moment. This past season, I wasn't high on the Kings because they didn't make anything groundbreaking. They didn't do anything groundbreaking in the offseason. There was no spark to this team. And the offensive efficiency dropped down tremendously. But this was the spark they needed to now get somebody like me who every night, and you know this, JC, because you used to come over my house and we used to watch these Kings games late at night at 11 p.m. We used to watch those games. Now this is getting me to watch the Kings again. You know what?
Too.
If they're on late, this is a team I want to watch with 3 All-Stars. We got to understand, the Kings got 3 All-Stars in Fox, Sabonis, and DeMar DeRozan, and they're still under the first apron. Yep. They're not even under any tax penalties, so their ownership isn't paying a ton of money to have this roster, and it's just simple math. You're swapping out a guy in Harrison Barnes who averaged 12, 3, and 1 for DeMar DeRozan who averaged 24, 4, and 5. I understand the stuff about holding the ball. I do, but I do believe that De'Aaron Fox was a catalyst in landing DeMar DeRozan, and they'll figure out how to play with each other. John was making this point earlier before the show that the starting lineup, as much as I love Keon Ellis and they need his defense, it's much better and it makes more sense if they start Kevin Huerter, because Keegan and Kevin Huerter can be the 2 floor spacers around Fox, DeMar, and Sabonis. Mm-hmm. And now Keon comes off the bench with Malik Monk and Trey Lyles and Devin Carter. And you have defense coming off your bench, because if they start Keon Ellis, now their 3 rotation players off the bench that are coming off the bench at first are Malik Monk, Trey Lyles, and Kevin Huerter. There's no defensive stopper in that bench rotation outside of Devin Carter, who's a rookie, and now you're relying on a rookie. So having Keon come off the bench makes the most sense, because now there's a defender coming off the bench with Malik Monk, so he can guard the opposing team's best players in those minutes. But the closing lineup for the Kings, Fox, Monk, DeMar, Keegan, Sabonis. That's going to be their closing lineup. We're talking about their spacing, but in late game situations, that 5 is going to close. And I think that 5 is very good. You got 3 guys who can at any time go and get a bucket in Fox, Monk, and DeRozan. Clutch, and on top of that, DeMar, this past season, 554th quarter points. De'Aaron Fox had 538. I mean, this team is going to be very fun to watch, and I think they're going to be the 5th best team in the Western Conference. To me, we have the Nuggets, Wolves, Mavericks, OKC, no order. That's the top 4. But outside of that, I think the Kings can be the 5th best team in the West next year.
I think that's valid.
Ooh,
the Western Conference, it feels like there's 2 tiers, where it's after you get that top 4, there's a lot of different teams in that bubble. Keon Ellis is fascinating, though, Joel, because while he only took 2.9 3-point attempts a game last year, it was in 17 minutes a game. And if he's going to be playing 25, 30 minutes, we're getting a guy who took 6 threes per 36, and he made 41% of them. But just a huge unknown, can he play under 1,000 minutes? I think the other thing for Sacramento that you both highlighted, you're getting 2 of the best fourth quarter closers in the game. You're getting one of the most durable forwards. I think more than anything, DeMar DeRozan's really become underrated, because so far, up until this point in his career, he's turning 35 next month. He's done nothing in the playoffs. But in the regular season, he has long been one of the most consistent players. And I think for Sacramento, you cannot look at the Western Conference with how much better Oklahoma City's getting, how aggressive Minnesota's been, how good the Nuggets are, and say, we're going to stay put with this team and not make any moves, because that is how you stagnate. And I want to give a lot of credit to Monty McNair, the Kings GM, who says, we're going to make a risk here. It's an imperfect fit when you've got De'Aaron Fox as the best shooter in your top 3 guys. But if De'Aaron's going to make 35, 36% of his threes, and you've got those 2 shooters, and Keegan, who's in a huge year 3, and Kevin Huerter, I think this can definitely work.
That's why I love this move, though, because where's the risk? Where's the risk in making this move for the Kings?
The risk is not making it.
You got rid of the worst starter in the starting 5 for DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah, for sure.
Facts.
Actually good.
Facts.
The only risk is potentially Fox not liking how it ends and leaves, because that's one of the big things that's been going on. He's been wanting to see how the Kings evaluate these next couple of years, and I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I do think players want to compete and stuff like that, so you definitely want to. I love the first action and going to get DeMar, being aggressive, trying to figure it out, even if it is as a little needle mover as this. Mm-hmm. You just want to stay aggressive and be on the approach, and that's all players ask for. Just be aggressive, try to put a team around me to win the championship.
Yo, fellas, I got a quick question, because you said they're going to be top 5, right?
Yeah.
I just to throw out, just throw a team out. Memphis healthy or the Kings?
I would say Memphis.
I would also go Memphis.
I was thinking about it too. I think Memphis.
Memphis.
It's very close though.
I respect them.
Yeah,
I
they're
kind
gonna
of
be
trust the
nice.
Kings. I trust the Kings' durability a little bit more.
You forgot about the Grizzlies, bro.
Big time.
And before the 22-23 season, nobody envisioned the Kings being number one in offensive rating. And now Mike Brown gets a huge piece to that puzzle to now improve their offense from this previous season, which ranked 13th.
Top 5 offense.
I'm gonna go with the Sacramento Kings because of their durability. The Memphis Grizzlies in a half court setting still have a lot to prove to me. They have a lot of depth. John Morant is a star. There's no doubt about it, and it could be higher than the 5th seed, if everything goes right. But I think durability right now is just a huge concern for them.
That's true.